Hello everyone, and welcome to Dead Time Stories. Tonight, the storm outside isn't the only thing brewing. True tales so chilling they'll make your skin crawl, yet so mesmerizing you won't be able to turn away. But here's the twist. That distant thunder isn't just atmosphere. It's the key to unlocking your deepest sleep. So before you drift off, let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from, and don't forget to like and subscribe. Now, let's get comfortable, relax, and dive into tonight's story. You didn't find the house. The house found you, through a listing that shouldn't have existed. It was nearly midnight when you saw it. You'd been scrolling rental ads the way you scroll when you're not really looking for anything anymore, just trying to quiet your brain with choices you don't intend to make. Then a photo stopped you cold. A porch light glowing like a small moon. White railings. A swing hanging perfectly still. And behind the glass of the front door, darkness that looked thick. Not shadow. Something heavier. The listing title read, "Quiet Home. Good sleeper. No pets." That didn't make sense. Homes didn't advertise like that. Homes didn't promise sleep. You clicked anyway. The description was short, almost blunt. 2-bedroom. Old but steady. The house likes calm tenants. If you have trouble sleeping, you won't hear. Do not bring animals. Do not paint the walls. Do not lock interior doors at night. You laughed once under your breath. Okay. Sure. But your finger hovered at the bottom where the contact button was. No name. No agency. Just an email, breathing house at, and the rest blurred like your eyes couldn't hold on to it. You should have closed the tab. Instead, you typed, "Hi. Is this still available?" You hit send. Your phone chimed immediately. Yes. Tour tomorrow. 5:10 p.m. Come alone. A second message followed before you could think. Do you wake up at 3:33? Your stomach dipped like you'd missed a stair. You didn't remember telling anyone that. Not friends, not your doctor. Not even your mother, who still called to ask if you were eating enough and sleeping enough and living enough. Your thumbs moved anyway. Sometimes. Why? The reply came slower, as if whoever typed it took a breath first. Then you'll fit. Bring one bag. If you bring more, the house will feel insulted. You stared at the screen until the brightness dimmed. Somewhere in your apartment, your fridge clicked on. The sound made you jump, and you felt ridiculous for it, an adult spooked by a rental ad. Still, you slept poorly. Not because you were scared. Because you were curious. The next day at 5:07 p.m. you parked at the edge of a narrow road that seemed to forget it was part of town. Trees leaned over like nosy neighbors. The air smelled like wet bark and old leaves. The house was there exactly like the photo, porch light glowing even though the sun was still up. You checked your phone. No new messages. A woman stood on the porch as if she'd been waiting for you for years. Not old, not young, ageless in the way some faces become when they don't do much smiling. She didn't wave. She simply said, "You're late." "I'm 3 minutes early," you answered, and heard how thin your voice sounded. Her eyes flicked over you, measuring. Close enough. You stepped onto the porch. The boards didn't creak. They softened under your shoes like they recognized your weight. The woman nodded at the door. "Before you go in, answer me honestly." "Okay. Do you talk in your sleep?" "I don't think so." She watched you a beat too long. Then, very quietly, "If you do, don't apologize." Your mouth went dry. "Why would I?" But she turned the knob. The door opened on its own, like the house had already decided. And the air inside was warm, too warm for an empty place. It smelled faintly of clean linen and something else, something mineral, like rain trapped in stone. You stepped over the threshold. Behind you, the door shut with a soft, final click. Not loud. Just certain. The entryway was narrow, the ceiling low enough to make you instinctively dip your head. Wallpaper, once floral, had faded into a blur of pale vines. The air held that same clean linen smell, but underneath it was something older, dust warmed by years, would that had absorbed too many winters. The woman stood just inside the door, hands folded like she was at a funeral. "I'm Marla," she said. "Landlord. Caretaker. Depends what you believe." You glanced back at the door. The lock was old brass, worn smooth by countless turns. You tried to keep your tone light. "It's nice. It behaves," Marla corrected. "If you do." A pause. Somewhere in the house, deep inside the walls, came a sound like a long, slow exhale. You froze. Marla didn't. "You heard that," she said, not a question. "Is that the furnace?" "No." She started down the hall, expecting you to follow. Your shoes barely made noise on the floorboards, like the wood swallowed sound. The living room opened to the left. A fireplace with an iron screen. 2 armchairs positioned as if someone had just stood up. On the mantel, no photos, only a clock that had no hands. "Does that work?" you asked, pointing. Marla didn't look. "It tells time the way this house prefers." "That's not funny." Her eyes finally met yours. "You won't laugh much here. Not because you'll be unhappy. Because you'll be careful." You swallowed. "I can leave." Marla's mouth twitched, almost a smile. "You can. The first day." That made your skin tighten. "What does that mean?" "It means the house is polite at first." She nodded toward the hallway again. "Come." As you walked, you noticed details that felt wrong in small ways. A framed painting hung slightly too high, as if meant for someone taller than you. A coat rack with hooks shaped like curled fingers. A narrow table with a bowl of keys, none of them modern, all old iron and brass. Marla stopped at a closed door. "Bathroom." She opened it without hesitation. The bathroom was clean, almost spotless. A clawfoot tub. A mirror so bright it looked freshly replaced. But the sink faucet was shaped like a tiny animal skull. "Rule 1, Marla said. Never run the bath after midnight." "Why?" "Because it gets thirsty." Your laugh came out by accident, sharp and nervous. Marla didn't laugh back. "I'm serious," she said. The house exhaled again, and this time you felt it, faint vibration in the floor, like a purring cat you couldn't see. You stepped back into the hallway. "Okay. No baths after midnight. Rule 2, she continued, walking again. "Do not bring pets." "I saw that." "And do not feed stray animals on the porch." "That's oddly specific." Marla stopped at the kitchen. It was bright compared to the rest of the house, with a wide window over the sink and cabinets painted a soft cream color. A jar of sugar sat on the counter. A loaf of bread, fresh, rested beside it. You stared. "Is someone living here?" "No," Marla said. Then, after a beat, "Not like you mean." You touched the bread. "Still warm." Marla's voice lowered. "It doesn't like to be empty. It makes arrangements." You pulled your hand away as if the bread had bitten you. "Who bakes it?" Marla's gaze flicked up toward the ceiling. "Sometimes the house remembers." You backed into the hall again. "What is this place?" Marla stepped closer. Her perfume smelled like cloves and rain-soaked wood. "It's a house," she said. "A good one. A patient one. It's helped people who couldn't sleep. People who couldn't stop thinking. People who wanted quiet." "I want quiet," you said, and hated how true it sounded. Marla nodded, as if you'd confessed something important. "Then you need to respect it." She led you to the stairs. The banister was smooth, polished by thousands of hands. Halfway up, she stopped. "Rule 3, she said softly. "Do not lock your bedroom door at night." "I lock doors," you said automatically. "It's normal. It doesn't like barriers," Marla replied. "It likes to check." "Check what?" Marla's eyes looked tired. "That you're still breathing." Your throat went tight. "That's insane." Marla didn't argue. She just climbed the rest of the stairs. The bedroom at the top was bigger than you expected. A simple bed frame, neatly made. pale curtains. A dresser with a single drawer slightly open, like an invitation. The window looked out over the trees, and the trees looked back. Marla stood by the foot of the bed. "Sit." "I'm not." "Sit," she repeated, and something in her tone made your legs obey. You sat on the edge of the mattress. It was firm but warm, as if someone had been lying there moments ago. Marla's voice softened. "You'll sleep here tonight." "I haven't said yes." "You already did," she said. "When you came alone." "You stood up too fast." "I'm leaving." Marla didn't move. "Then go." You turned and marched toward the stairs. The house was quiet. Too quiet. Halfway down, your phone buzzed in your pocket. You pulled it out. No service. No bars. But a notification was there anyway, glowing on your dark screen. "Welcome home." Your skin prickled. You looked up. At the bottom of the stairs, Marla stood in the entryway, watching you. Behind her, the front door was closed. "Go on," she said gently. "Try." You walked the last steps and reached for the doorknob. It turned easily. But the door didn't open. It was like pulling on the lid of a sealed jar, smooth resistance, no give, no creak. The wood felt warm beneath your palm. Marla's voice came from behind you, almost kind. "It's not refusing you," she said. "It's just holding its breath." You pressed your ear to the door. And from within the walls, very close now, you heard it. Inhale. Slow. Deep. Waiting. You tried the door again, harder. The knob wobbled in your grip, polite as a stranger's handshake, but the door stayed shut, no rattle, no protest. Just that smooth, impossible resistance, like the house had decided the outside world was no longer part of the layout. Marla didn't move from the hall. "Don't pull like that," she said quietly. You spun around. "It's stuck." "It's listening," she corrected. "When you fight it, it thinks you're scared." "I am scared," you snapped. Marla's eyes softened, and for the first time she looked almost human. "That's okay. Just don't make it your whole personality." Your breath came too fast. You forced it slower, like you were trying to negotiate with your own lungs. "Open it," you said. "Whatever you did, undo it." Marla stepped closer, stopping a few feet away, as if the space between you was marked. "I didn't do anything. But I can ask." She placed her palm against the wallpaper beside the door. It was an odd gesture, intimate, like touching a sleeping animal's flank. "Easy," she murmured. "Easy." They knew. The house exhaled. Not the faint sigh from earlier. This one was unmistakable, air moving through something hollow, old, enormous. The porch light outside flickered once. The pressure on the door eased like a hand letting go. Marla withdrew her palm. "There," she said. You yanked the door open. Outside was the porch. The same porch, same trees, same road. But the air felt wrong. Flat. Like a photograph of air. Even the birdsong sounded distant, played from somewhere far away. You stepped onto the porch and looked down the road. Your car was there. But the windshield was fogged from the inside, as if someone had been breathing in it for hours. A cold pinch crawled up your spine. You turned back toward Marla. "What is this?" Marla stayed in the doorway, not crossing the threshold. "A warning," she said. "It lets you see you can leave, and still not get away." You took a step toward the car anyway. Gravel shifted under your shoe with a crunchy sound that seemed too loud. The trees leaned in. The porch light behind you buzzed faintly. Your phone buzzed again. No service still, yet the screen lit. "Don't walk off the property after dark. You'll lose the road." You stared at the message until your eyes watered. "This is insane," you whispered. Marla's voice drifted to you. "It's not malicious. It's possessive." "Possessive?" You echoed, and heard your voice shake. Marla sighed. "People always think the worst word is haunted. It's not. The worst word is lonely." A creak came from the porch swing. You hadn't touched it. There was no wind. It moved once, slow and gentle, like someone had just sat down. Then it stopped, perfectly centered, as if balanced by invisible weight. You backed toward the door. "I'm not staying." "You are," Marla said, and this time her tone wasn't harsh. It was certain. "Just for tonight. If you still want to go in the morning, you'll go. And if I don't?" Marla's gaze flicked to the porch swing. "Then it'll start thinking of you as part of the furniture." The swing creaked again, one small, pleased sound. You stepped back inside without meaning to. The warmth swallowed you immediately, like the house had been waiting with open arms. Marla closed the door behind you, gently, like tucking in a child. "Good," she said. "Now, one more thing before you sleep." She pointed down the hallway, toward the stairs. "If you hear your name tonight," Marla whispered, "do not answer out loud." Your mouth went dry. "Why?" Marla's eyes lifted toward the ceiling, toward the breathing inside the walls. "Because," she said, "it might not be you it's calling." Marla didn't stay to say goodnight. She left the way people leave hospitals, quietly, with a practiced ease, already halfway gone before you realized she'd turned away. You heard the front door open, then close again, and for a brief, dizzy moment you wondered if she'd ever been there at all. The house settled. That was the only way to describe it. Not silence, never silence, but a slow, deliberate adjustment, like a body getting comfortable in bed. The walls creaked softly. The stairs whispered. Somewhere overhead, something shifted its weight. You stood alone in the hallway, arms wrapped around yourself. "Okay," you murmured. "Okay." Your voice sounded wrong here. Too sharp. The house seemed to absorb it, dulling the edges, smoothing it down like it did with footsteps. You climbed the stairs slowly. Each step felt warm beneath your feet, almost welcoming. The bedroom door stood open exactly as you'd left it. The bed waited. You set your bag down by the dresser and glanced at the drawer that had been slightly open before. It was closed now. That made your chest tighten. You opened it. Inside was nothing but neatly folded linens, white, clean, smelling faintly of soap and rain. But tucked beneath them was something that didn't belong, a single sock. Gray. Worn thin at the heel. Not yours. You let the drawer slide shut without touching the sock again. The bathroom light flicked on when you stepped inside, though you were certain you hadn't reached for the switch. Your reflection in the mirror looked calmer than you felt. Your eyes heavier. Your shoulders lower, as if sleep were already tugging at you. "Don't run the bath," you reminded yourself quietly. The faucet dripped once. You froze. Then it stopped. Back in the bedroom, you sat on the bed and unlaced your shoes. The mattress dipped slightly under your weight, too much for an empty room. It felt as though someone had shifted closer, careful not to touch. You left the bedroom door unlocked. The light switch clicked off easily, and darkness pooled around you. Moonlight spilled in through the window, painting pale shapes on the walls. The trees outside swayed gently, their shadows moving like slow, patient hands. You lay back and stared at the ceiling. The breathing began almost immediately. Inhale. Exhale. Slow. Deep. Close. You tried to tell yourself it was pipes. Old wood. Heat settling. But the rhythm was too precise. Too intentional. It matched your chest before you even realized you were sinking to it. In, out. Your eyelids grew heavy. Just as you drifted, you heard it. Your name. Soft. Familiar. Spoken the way someone says it when they don't want to wake you. You stiffened. It came again, closer this time. Not from the hall. Not from the walls. From the foot of the bed. Your heart hammered. You pressed your lips together, remembering Marla's warning. Don't answer. The mattress dipped. Just slightly. Your name was spoken again, a whisper wrapped in warmth and concern. It sounded like your mother. Or a friend. Or yourself, calling from inside a dream. Your mouth opened before you could stop it. You bit your tongue. Pain flared, sharp, grounding, and the whisper stopped. The house inhaled deeply. The pressure on the bed eased. The breathing slowed, almost disappointed. You lay there shaking, tears slipping sideways into your hair. Minutes passed. Or hours. Time lost its shape. Eventually, sleep took you. Not gently, but thoroughly. You dreamed you were awake. That was the first mistake your mind made. In the dream, you lay exactly as you were now, on your back, hands folded loosely over your stomach, breath rising and falling in time with the house. Moonlight traced the same familiar cracks in the ceiling. The room felt unchanged. But the breathing was louder. Closer. You realized, slowly, that it wasn't coming from the walls anymore. It was coming from beneath you. The mattress expanded gently with each inhale, then softened as it released the air again. Not mechanical. Not rhythmic like a machine. Organic. Thoughtful. Alive. You tried to move. Your fingers twitched, then stopped. It felt as though invisible weight pressed lightly against your wrists and ankles, not pinning, just reminding. Stay still. The words weren't spoken aloud, but they arrived fully formed in your mind, warm and reassuring. You felt a wave of calm wash over you, heavy as a blanket. In the dream, the bedroom door creaked open. A figure stood in the doorway. Tall. Too tall. Its head nearly brushed the frame, forcing it to tilt sideways as it leaned in. Its shape was wrong in the dark, edges blurring, limbs bending at places they shouldn't. It took a step forward. The floor didn't creak. The thing's chest rose and fell in perfect sync with the bed beneath you. You wanted to scream. Instead, you breathed. In. Out. The figure reached the foot of the bed and stopped. Slowly, deliberately, it lowered itself to sit. The mattress compressed further, cocooning you in warmth. The pressure was comforting now, protective. The thing tilted its head. You couldn't see its face, but you knew it was smiling. You sleep better than the others, it thought at you. Others. Your heart stuttered. They kicked. They cried. They tried to leave. The thing leaned closer, its presence filling the room. The air smelled like clean sheets and damp earth. You listened. A soft sound came from the hall, dragging footsteps, slow and uneven. More shapes gathered just beyond the doorway, watching, waiting. You wanted to ask what they were. You wanted to ask what it was. But the pressure on your tongue increased gently, like a finger pressed there in warning. Sleep, the house urged. We'll explain later. Darkness folded in on itself. You woke with a sharp gasp. Morning light filled the room. Birds chirped outside, bright and normal. Your body felt rested in a way that almost frightened you, every muscle loose, your mind clear and empty. For a moment, you convinced yourself it had all been a nightmare. Then you noticed the indentation at the foot of the bed. Still there. As if something very heavy had been sitting there for a long time. Downstairs, the smell of fresh bread drifted upward. And beneath it all, barely audible now, the house breathed, slow and content. Like it knew something about you that you didn't yet remember. You stayed in bed longer than necessary, watching the sunlight crawl across the wall inch by inch, as if you could measure safety by brightness alone. Morning should have broken the spell. Morning should have thinned the fear until it felt silly. But the house was still warm. Not warmed by sunlight, holding warmth. Like it hadn't slept at all. When you finally swung your legs over the side of the bed, the floor greeted your feet with a softness that made you shiver. Not carpet. Wood. Yielding just enough to feel intentional. Okay. You whispered, more to yourself than anything else. Okay. Your voice felt absorbed again, smoothed into something quieter. You dressed quickly, avoiding the mirror. You didn't want to see if your reflection hesitated this time. The hallway outside your room looked unchanged, but the air felt thicker, carrying a low hum you felt in your teeth rather than your ears. Downstairs, the kitchen was bright. Too bright. Sunlight poured through the window, illuminating the table where a plate waited. Toast. Eggs. A mug already steaming. You stopped in the doorway. No, you said aloud. The mug bore a faint ring where lips had rested. You hadn't come downstairs yet. The chair at the table creaked softly, as if inviting you to pull it out. The house exhaled, long and patient, and something about that breath made your shoulders loosen despite yourself. You sat. The chair fit you perfectly. The toast was warm. The eggs seasoned exactly the way you liked them, though you couldn't remember ever telling anyone that. The first bite made your stomach twist, not with disgust, but relief. You ate like you hadn't eaten well in years. When the plate was empty, the dishes slid a fraction of an inch closer to the sink on their own. You stood abruptly, heart pounding. "I didn't ask for this," you said. The house inhaled. From somewhere nearby came the soft sound of wood settling, like knuckles cracking after a long sleep. You grabbed your bag and moved toward the front door. Daylight streamed through the glass. Everything looked normal again, the road, the trees, your car. You reached for the knob. It turned. The door opened. Hope flared too fast. Then you stepped outside, and the air felt wrong again. Not flat this time. Thin. Like breathing at a higher altitude. Your lungs worked harder with each breath. The road stretched out, but the edges of it blurred, wavering like heat over asphalt. You took another step. Your phone buzzed. Rule reminder. Don't leave without saying goodbye. Your pulse roared in your ears. Goodbye. You snapped. There. I said it. The house was silent. Too silent. Then inhale. The porch boards softened under your feet, gripping gently. Not trapping. Not yet. Just enough to let you know it could. You staggered backward, heart racing, and fell hard onto the porch. The boards cushioned the impact, cradling you. You scrambled up and back toward the door. "I'll stay," you said quickly. Just give me time." The pressure eased. The air thickened again, breathable, familiar. The house exhaled. You stood there shaking, understanding something vital at last. It didn't want to keep you against your will. It wanted you to choose it. Inside, the clock without hands ticked once. Not forward. Down. After that, the house behaved. That was the unsettling part. No whispers. No pressure beneath your feet. No messages blooming uninvited on your phone. The door opened when you touched it. The windows stayed windows. The breathing retreated into something so faint you could almost convince yourself it was memory. Almost. You spent the afternoon exploring, telling yourself that understanding the layout would give you control. Old houses had quirks. Secrets. But secrets could be learned. The second bedroom was empty except for a narrow bed and a dresser bolted to the wall. The closet door stuck slightly, resisting before opening with a sigh. Inside hung 3 coats, outdated styles, heavy wool, the kind people wore decades ago. All different sizes. You closed the door slowly. In the study, shelves lined the walls from floor to ceiling. Most were empty, but a few held photo albums with no labels. You opened one. The first photograph showed the front of the house, younger somehow. The porch railings were intact. The paint fresh. A couple stood on the steps, smiling. Their faces were blurred. Not out of focus, smooth, like someone had rubbed them away with a thumb. The next photo showed a family. The one after that, a single woman sitting on the porch swing. In every picture, the house was clear. Only the people faded. You shut the album and left it on the table, face down. Late afternoon shadows stretched long when you noticed movement outside. A woman stood across the road, half hidden among the trees. She was watching the house, or maybe watching you. You stepped onto the porch. "Hello?" She flinched like she hadn't expected you to speak. Up close, she looked tired, eyes ringed dark, hair pulled back too tight. "You shouldn't be there," she said quickly. Your stomach dropped. "Do you know this place?" Her gaze flicked to the door behind you, then back to your face. "My brother lived there." "Lived? What happened to him?" She hesitated. "He said he'd never slept better. Said the house took care of him. Then one day, he stopped answering his phone." Cold crept up your arms. "Did you call the police?" She laughed. A short, brittle sound. They said he moved? No forwarding address. No signs of struggle. She took a step closer to the road's edge. The landlord told me he'd left willingly. Marla. Your mouth went dry. Did he? The woman's eyes filled with something like grief. Or envy. I don't know. But sometimes, late at night, I hear breathing when I walk past. And I swear, it sounds like him. A floorboard creaked behind you. The woman's face drained of color. It knows I'm here, she whispered. I shouldn't have come. She backed away into the trees, moving fast now. If it starts calling you, don't answer. And if you dream of staying forever. She turned and ran. The house exhaled behind you. Warm. Possessive. Almost offended. You stood frozen on the porch, realizing the house hadn't shown you everything yet. It was just being polite. The front door closed behind you without a sound. Not slammed. Not locked. Just sealed. The kind of closure that didn't need force to be final. You stood in the entryway, heart still racing from the woman's warning. The house felt different now, no longer quietly attentive, but alert. Like it had noticed a change in your tone. Like it had decided to stop pretending. Okay, you said, forcing steadiness into your voice. I'm still here. The house inhaled. The warmth returned immediately, stronger this time, blooming through the walls and floor. The tension in your shoulders eased against your will. You hated how good it felt. The clock without hands ticked again. Twice. You moved toward it compelled. The face was blank, pale, smooth, until faint lines appeared, slowly etching themselves into the surface like breath on glass. Words. Stay. You stepped back. I didn't agree to that. The letters softened, melted away, and reformed. You haven't disagreed either. Your phone buzzed in your pocket. You yanked it out. No service. But the screen lit anyway. A photo filled it. You asleep in the bed. Taken from above. The timestamp read 3:33 a.m. Your hands shook so badly you nearly dropped the phone. That's not possible. From the hallway came the faint sound of footsteps. Not heavy. Not rushed. Bare feet on wood. You turned slowly. A man stood at the far end of the hall. Early 30s. Unremarkable. Wearing jeans and a t-shirt that looked too thin for the season. His face was familiar in the vague way strangers sometimes are. I didn't mean to scare you, he said softly. It does that sometimes. Your throat tightened. Who are you? He smiled, tired but kind. I used to ask that too. He gestured toward the walls. It doesn't like labels. Says names make people want to leave. Your pulse hammered. You're the woman's brother. He nodded. I told her I was fine. I am fine. You're trapped. His smile faltered just a little. That's not how it feels after a while. The house breathed deeply, approving. He took a step closer. It takes care of you. Listens. Holds things together when you can't. I want to go home, you whispered. He looked genuinely confused. This is home now. Behind him, the hallway seemed longer than before, stretching back into dimness. Shapes shifted at the edges, others, half seen, standing patiently out of view. You'll meet them soon, he said gently. Once the house decides you're ready. What happens if I say no? The man glanced upward, toward the ceiling. Then it gets anxious. A low creak rippled through the floorboards. The walls flexed inward a fraction of an inch. The man stepped back, concern flickering across his face. You shouldn't upset it yet, he said. It hates feeling rejected. The lights flickered once. Then again. The house inhaled, sharper now. Hungry. The light steadied, but the air did not. It thickened, pressing against your ears, your chest, as if the house were leaning in to listen more closely than before. The man, the brother you reminded yourself, back down the hall, palms raised. Easy, he murmured. Not to you. The floor answered with a slow, rolling creak that traveled from the entryway toward the stairs. like a spine adjusting. The walls shuddered once, then held. You swallowed. You said it gets anxious. What does that mean? He hesitated, choosing his words carefully. It forgets how big it is. Another creak, closer. A picture frame slid a quarter-inch down the wall and stopped. When it's calm, he went on. It stretches. Gives space. Rooms feel bigger than they are. But when it's upset, he trailed off, eyes flicking to the ceiling. The hallway narrowed. Not visibly, not in a way you could point to, but the distance between your shoulders and the walls felt reduced, intimate, like a crowd closing in. I didn't reject it, you said quickly. I just said I wanted to go home. He smiled, sad. That's rejection to something that is a home. Your phone vibrated again. You didn't want to look. You did anyway. A message appeared, letters forming one by one. You sound unsettled. We can fix that. The warmth surged, stronger than before, washing through you in a wave that made your knees wobble. For a terrifying second, you understood why people stayed. How easy it would be to let go. To let the house hold everything. No, you said, louder than you meant to. The warmth recoiled. The house inhaled sharply. Somewhere above you, a door slammed. The man winced. You should apologize. I'm not apologizing to a building. It doesn't hear building, he said urgently. It hears tone. Another sound joined the breathing now, something like fingernails tracing slowly along wood. From the stairs. From the walls. From inside the walls. Your name drifted down the hall. Soft. Careful. Inviting. You clamped your mouth shut. The man nodded in approval. Good. Don't answer. Not yet. Not yet? You whispered. He glanced toward the study. Come with me. There are things it hasn't shown you. Things it doesn't like to remember unless someone asks the right way. Why would you help me? He met your eyes. For the first time, you saw fear there. Real fear buried deep. Because sometimes, he said, it lets one person leave. The house exhaled, long, uneasy. From the ceiling came a sound like someone shifting their weight, deciding where to step next. Move, he said. And you ran, the walls breathing faster as you did. You ran harder than you meant to. The hallway seemed to stretch ahead of you, the end drifting farther away with every step. The floor rolled beneath your feet like a slow wave, softening, rebounding, testing your balance. Behind you, the breathing grew uneven, shorter inhales, longer exhales, like the house was working itself into a panic. Here, the man hissed. He shoved open the study door and pulled you inside. The moment the door shut, the sound dropped, muffled, distant, like you'd submerged underwater. The room smelled of paper and dust and something faintly metallic. The shelves trembled. Photo albums slid forward, then stopped, as if restrained by invisible hands. The man pressed his back to the door, breathing hard. It doesn't like this room, he said. It remembers too much in here. What are you? You demanded, your voice shaking. What did it do to you? He flinched at the word do. It didn't hurt me, he said quickly. That's the problem. It helped. Too well. He crossed to the desk and opened a drawer. Inside lay a stack of letters tied with twine. The paper was yellowed, edges curled. People used to write to it, he said. Before phones. Before email. They'd leave notes in the walls. In the vents. In drawers like this. Why? Because it answered. A thump shook the door. Not a strike, pressure. Like a shoulder leaning into it. The man untied the twine and handed you a letter. Dear house, it began. Please don't let me wake up screaming anymore. Another thump. The doorknob rattled once, gently. You flipped through the letters faster now. I'll stay if you keep them away. You can have the upstairs if I can keep the porch. Please don't take my voice. Your hands went numb. It negotiates, the man said softly. That's how it survives. It trades comfort for presence. Quiet for time. What happens when it runs out of room? You whispered. The man's eyes lifted to the ceiling. It builds inward. The breathing outside the study grew louder, closer. The walls bulged a fraction of an inch, pulsing with each inhale. Why are you still here? You asked him. He smiled, hollow. Because I asked it to keep my sister safe. Your stomach dropped. The woman outside. It listens carefully, he said. But it doesn't always understand what we mean. The door bowed inward. The house inhaled, deep, desperate. The man grabbed your arm. When it calls your name again, he said urgently, answer me instead. Another thump. This one was impatient. The study door shuddered, then stilled. Silence pressed in, thick, expectant. Your pulse roared in your ears as the man loosened his grip on your arm but didn't let go completely. His hand was cold, lighter than you expected, like he wasn't fully anchored to his own weight. Listen, he whispered. It's about to ask. As if summoned by the words, the house inhaled. Not from one place. From everywhere. The shelves hummed softly. The desk vibrated beneath your fingertips. Even the letters in your hands fluttered, edges lifting like they were breathing too. Then it spoke. Your name drifted through the study door, stretched and careful, pronounced with aching familiarity. It sounded like someone you trusted. Someone who knew you when you were tired and honest and unguarded. Your throat tightened. The man leaned close to your ear. Don't look at the door, he murmured. It uses eye contact. Your name came again, warmer this time. Closer. You squeezed your eyes shut. I'm here, the voice coaxed. You don't need to hide. I just want to help you rest. Your mouth opened before you could stop it. But instead of answering it, you said the man's name. You didn't know how you knew it. It was simply there, waiting behind your teeth. The effect was immediate. The house faltered. The breathing stuttered, inhale catching halfway through like a gasp of surprise. The pressure on the walls eased, then surged again, uncertain. The man stiffened. His hand tightened around your arm. That's it, he whispered. It doesn't like being reminded we talk to each other. Outside the door, something shifted its weight. Not angrily. Confused. A new sound joined the breathing, whispers layered over one another, too many to count. Fragments of voices overlapping. Stay. Rest. Just a little longer. Don't leave me. The desk drawer slid open on its own. A photograph lay inside, one you hadn't seen yet. It showed the study. This study? And in the photo, you stood beside the desk, holding the letters. But your face was blurred. Time isn't straight here, the man said quietly. It folds when it gets scared. The whispering grew louder. You felt the house inhale again, deeper this time, pulling warmth from the floor, the walls, the air itself. Your limbs felt heavy. Sleep tugged at your thoughts like a tide. Say my name again, the man urged. Out loud. You swallowed and did. The whispering fractured. A sharp creak ripped through the house, like something bending too far. From somewhere above, glass shattered. The house exhaled hard. Angry now. The anger felt like a pressure change. Your ears popped. The air thinned, then thickened again, heavy with heat. The study door bowed inward, wood fibers groaning as if strained by something far larger than its frame. The man staggered, catching himself on the desk. It doesn't like losing control, he said through clenched teeth. It never learned how to share. Your name echoed again, but wrong this time. Too many voices layered together, each one close, overlapping, tripping over syllables like a crowd calling for you in the dark. The shelves rattled. Books slid free and thudded to the floor, opening to blank pages. The photo albums trembled, then spilled open, images fluttering out, faces blurred, bodies half erased, all standing on the same porch. Always the porch. Why won't it let people go? You shouted. The man looked at you, eyes bright with something like grief. Because if it lets go, he said, it has to remember what it was built for. A crack split the ceiling, thin as a vein. Dust rained down. The house inhaled, Deep, shuddering, and the walls leaned in. Not collapsing. Embracing. You were pressed toward the center of the room, the floor subtly sloping, guiding you like a bowl. The warmth intensified, almost pleasant, and that terrified you more than the noise. You feel that, don't you? The man said urgently. That part of you that wants to lie down and let it finish? You nodded despite yourself. Good, he said. That means you're still you. The study door burst open. The hallway beyond was longer now, far longer than it had any right to be, stretching into a dim tunnel lined with doors that breathed softly in unison. Shapes stood between them. People. Almost. Their outlines were incomplete, edges fading in and out like bad reception. Some watched you. Others faced the walls, palms pressed flat, whispering thanks. The house exhaled, slow, deliberate. A thought settled into your mind, heavy and intimate. We can keep you safe. Just say you're tired. The man grabbed your shoulders and forced your gaze to his. You don't know it rest, he said fiercely. You don't know it anything. The floor surged. You stumbled, nearly falling to your knees as the hallway began to close, doors sliding inward inch by inch, sealing the space. Run, he said. But I'll slow it down. His grip tightened once, then released. You turned and ran into the narrowing hall as the study door slammed shut behind you, the sound swallowed by a furious, desperate inhale. The hallway narrowed as you ran, not fast, never fast, but steadily, like a patient decision being carried out. The doors along the walls slid inward by fractions of an inch, wood whispering against wood, each movement timed to the house's breathing. Inhale, doors pause. Exhale, doors creep closer. Your footsteps were soundless now. The floor no longer resisted or supported you. It guided you, subtly tilting, funneling you forward as if the house had decided where you belonged. Not yet, you whispered. Please. Not yet. The house did not answer with words. It answered by changing the hall. The wallpaper shifted, patterns dissolving into something older, raw plaster, cracked and yellowed. The air cooled, carrying the smell of damp stone and forgotten basements. The lights overhead dimmed, then vanished entirely, replaced by a pale glow that seemed to seep from the walls themselves. You passed a door that stood half open. Inside, a child's bedroom. A small bed. A night light shaped like a moon. A figure sat on the edge of the mattress, humming softly, back turned. You didn't stop. Another door. A living room. A man lay on the couch, eyes open, chest rising and falling in time with the house. His lips moved. Thank you, he whispered, to the ceiling, to the walls, to the thing that held him. Your throat burned as you ran. The hallway curved now, looping back on itself, impossibly long. You realized with sick clarity that this was how it kept people, not with locks, not with force, but by forgetting where exits went. Your phone buzzed. You nearly dropped it. The screen glowed with a single line of text. You're lost. That's exhausting. No, you gasped. You did this. We did this together. The floor dipped sharply, and you stumbled, catching yourself against the wall. The surface pulsed beneath your palm, warm and alive, reacting to your touch like skin. Your name echoed again, closer now, less layered, almost singular. It sounded like the man from the study. Your chest tightened. You promised, you whispered. The house inhaled, long and careful, and for a moment the hallway stopped moving. The door at the end, one you hadn't seen before, appeared. Plain. Wooden. Familiar. Your bedroom door. Hope flared, sharp and dangerous. You ran for it. Behind you, the house breathed faster, not angry, not panicked. Eager. Just before you reached the door, the whisper came again, right behind your ear. Lie down, it said gently. You're almost there. Your hand closed around the knob. It was warm, and it was turning. The door opened inward, not into your bedroom, into darkness. You stumbled forward before you could stop yourself, the floor dropping away just enough to steal your balance. The door shut behind you with a soft, disappointed click. The dark wasn't empty. It was full, thick with warmth, dense with breath. You felt it immediately, pressing against your skin like a heavy blanket pulled too high. The air smelled of dust, soap, and something older, something that had learned patience the hard way. Your feet touched ground again. Soft ground. Carpet. You knew this place. The room lit slowly, not with a switch, but like eyes adjusting. Shapes emerged, the bed, the dresser, the window with its familiar trees. Your bedroom. Exactly as you'd left it. Except the bed was occupied. You lay there. Eyes closed. Hands folded neatly on your chest. Breathing slow and even. For a wild moment, you thought you were dreaming again, some trick of exhaustion. But then the figure on the bed inhaled, and the house inhaled with it, perfectly synchronized. "No," you whispered. The you on the bed smiled faintly, eyes still closed. The house spoke, not aloud, not inside your head, but through the room, vibrating in the bones of the walls. "This is the part where you rest." You backed away until your shoulders touched the wall. It yielded slightly, warm and pliant, like muscle relaxing under pressure. "I didn't agree to this," you said, louder now. The other you exhaled. The room warmed in response. "You're tired," the house replied gently. "You've been tired a long time. We can finish this for you." The you on the bed opened their eyes. They looked clearer than you felt. Peaceful. Empty in a way that made your chest ache. "Let me have it," they said softly. "You don't need to carry it anymore." "What happens to me?" you asked, voice shaking. They considered this. "You stay," they said. "Just quieter." The bed dipped as the house adjusted its grip. The walls leaned in a fraction of an inch. Your name was spoken again, but this time, it came from your own mouth, from the lips of the thing lying so comfortably in your place. "Lie down," it said kindly. "I'll take it from here." Behind you, the wall pulsed. Waiting. You pressed your back into the wall and felt it give. Not collapse, receive. The surface warmed instantly, molding to the shape of your shoulders, your spine, like it had been waiting to remember you. Panic flared, sharp and electric, cutting through the heavy calm the house kept trying to pour into you. "No," you said again, and this time you meant it. "I'm not done." The other you tilted their head on the pillow. Curious. Almost fond. "That's what I said too," they replied gently. Right before it stopped hurting. The house inhaled. The room tightened, not smaller, not exactly, but more intimate. The ceiling lowered a fraction. The corners softened, rounding, erasing angles. The world reduced itself to bed, walls, breath. You felt the pull then. Not physical. Emotional. Like gravity applied to memory instead of matter. Thoughts drifted toward the bed, unfinished conversations, nights staring at the ceiling, the ache of always being awake when the rest of the world slept. The house knew where to press. "You can rest," it whispered. "We'll hold the rest of it." Your knees buckled. You caught yourself on the dresser, fingers digging into the wood. It pulsed once beneath your grip, responding like a living thing. "What happens to the others?" you asked hoarsely. "The ones in the halls. The ones in the rooms." The other you hesitated. "They stay," they said. "They soften. Some forget their names. Some don't want them anymore. That's not living." They smiled sadly. "It's not hurting." The house exhaled, longer now, heavier, like a sigh of relief. The bed creaked invitingly, blankets shifting on their own. For a terrifying second, you imagined lying down, letting the warmth seal around you, letting the house breathe for you. Then you remembered the man in the study. The way he'd said the house didn't know how to share. You straightened, forcing your lungs to work against the pressure. Inhale. Exhale. Yours. Not the house's. "I won't disappear," you said. The other you frowned for the first time. "Why fight it? It's already learning you. Then it can learn this," you said, and stepped away from the bed. The room shuddered. The breathing hitched. The house inhaled too sharply, like surprise edging into fear. The wall behind you stiffened. For the first time since you entered the house, it didn't know where you were going. The moment you stepped away from the bed, the room reacted. Not violently. Not yet. The warmth wavered, uneven now, like a breath taken too fast and let out too slow. The walls stiffened, their gentle give replaced by something closer to tension. Muscle held too long in one position. The other you sat up. That, more than anything, frightened you. They moved awkwardly, as if the house hadn't practiced this version yet. Their feet touched the floor, and the boards sighed in relief, molding around their weight with familiarity you suddenly realized you didn't have. "You're making this harder than it needs to be," they said, though their voice lacked the earlier calm. There was strain there now. Effort. "Good," you replied, forcing yourself to keep backing toward the door. "You shouldn't be able to do this easily." The house inhaled. Too fast. The ceiling rippled, a subtle wave traveling across it like breath under skin. The window rattled, trees outside blurring, their branches pressing closer to the glass as if drawn by curiosity or hunger. "Don't panic," the house whispered, and you understood then, it wasn't a command. It was advice. The other you took a step toward you. The floor welcomed them, reshaping instantly, erasing distance. When you stepped, the boards resisted, just slightly, like the house hadn't decided how much of you it wanted yet. "You don't have to leave," they said. "You can stay awake if you want. It'll still take care of you." "By erasing me?" They paused. The house's breathing stuttered again, echoing their hesitation. "That's not what it feels like from here," they admitted. The dresser behind you slid an inch to the side, blocking your path. The door handle warmed beneath the house's attention. "You're tired," the house repeated, softer now. "We're only trying to help." You laughed. A short, sharp sound that felt like breaking glass inside your chest. "You don't help people by replacing them." The room shook. Not in anger. In confusion. The house inhaled deeply, holding the breath too long. The pressure built in your ears, in your skull, until spots danced at the edges of your vision. The other you clutched their head. "Stop," they whispered, "not to you. You're hurting them." The house exhaled in a rush. The dresser slid back. The door creaked open an inch. You stared at the gap, heart hammering. The house didn't understand resistance. It understood negotiation. And it was learning, slowly, clumsily, that you weren't going to lie down quietly. Not yet. The gap in the door felt unreal. Not freedom, never that, but possibility. A thin slice of uncertainty the house hadn't meant to offer, created by its own hesitation. You moved toward it slowly, careful not to trigger another correction. The other you watched, eyes wide now, fear finally cracking through their borrowed calm. "If you leave this room," they said, voice shaking, "it won't know what to do with me." That stopped you. "What do you mean?" They swallowed. "I'm a solution. Something it made so you wouldn't have to carry everything anymore. If you don't accept it," their voice dropped to a whisper, "it has to decide which one of us is real." The house inhaled. Long. Uncertain. The breathing echoed strangely now, out of rhythm with itself, like lungs that couldn't agree on timing. The walls trembled, not leaning in or pulling back, hovering between choices. "We don't want to lose you," the house said, and for the first time there was something like fear in its voice. "We only want one of you to rest." "One," you said quietly. "Not both." The floor creaked in protest. The other you took another step forward, and this time, the house hesitated before supporting them. The boards dipped unevenly, as if unsure which weight to prioritize. They noticed. "So did you." "You're fading," you said. They looked down at their hands. The edges of their fingers blurred slightly, like breath on cold glass. Panic flashed across their face. "No, wait, I can fix this. Just lie down. Please." The house inhaled sharply. The door behind you creaked wider. "You don't need to erase me to keep me," you said to the room, to the walls, to the breathing itself. "You want presence? Then let me stay awake." The house fell silent. Not the heavy silence of threat, but the stunned quiet of something hearing a new idea for the first time. The other you looked between you and the door, realization dawning. It never offered that before, they whispered. Because no one asked? You said. The house exhaled, slow, trembling. Staying awake hurts, it replied. So does being alone, you said. The walls softened, just a little. And somewhere deep inside the house, something ancient shifted, reconsidering what it meant to keep someone. The house did not answer right away. Its silence was not empty. It was crowded, thick with calculation, with old habits bumping into new possibilities. The walls held their shape but lost their certainty, flexing subtly, like a jaw unclenching after years of being set too tight. The breathing resumed, slower now. Careful. Staying awake hurts, the house repeated, less confidently this time. You'll feel everything. I already do, you said. Your voice shook, but it didn't disappear into the walls this time. It stayed. Echoed faintly. Yours. The other you sank onto the edge of the bed, hands pressed to their face. It takes the edges off, they murmured. That's all it ever wanted to do. Make things soft. I don't want soft, you said. I want real. The house inhaled, and stopped halfway through. The pressure in the room shifted abruptly, like gravity tilting. You staggered, catching yourself on the doorframe as the hallway beyond came into focus. It looked wrong now, less endless, more cramped, like a memory losing detail. If you stay awake, the house said slowly, you'll hear the others. The words sent a chill through you. I already have. A pause. You'll feel them leave. The other you looked up sharply. Leave? Fear cracked their voice. You said they stayed? The house did not answer immediately. The bed creaked softly beneath the other you as the mattress lost its perfect contour, sagging into something more ordinary. The warmth in the room dimmed, retreating from your skin like water pulling back from shore. They weren't supposed to leave, the other you whispered. You didn't ask if they wanted to stay, you said. The house exhaled, a long, aching sound that rippled through every beam and joint. From somewhere deep within, a door closed. Then another. Not slamming. Just finishing. The hallway beyond the bedroom shifted again. A shape moved, then faded. A presence lifted, lightened, and slipped away like breath released after years of being held. The other you gasped. Their outline flickered. No, they said, reaching for you, fingers blurring at the tips. Don't do this. If I go. You don't go, you said softly. You stop pretending to be me. The house inhaled again, shallow and uncertain. We don't know how to keep you both, it admitted. Then don't, you replied. Learn. The door behind you opened wider. Not inviting. Allowing. And for the first time, the house didn't try to stop it. The hallway beyond the door felt colder. Not hostile, just unfamiliar, like a place the house hadn't walked through in a very long time. The walls no longer curved to guide you. They stood straighter now, angles returning, corners sharpening back into existence. Behind you, the bedroom changed. The bed sagged into an ordinary shape. The other you sat hunched on the edge, shoulders slumped, breathing unevenly. Each inhale no longer matched the house. Each exhale left them a little less defined. You're letting it forget me, they said, voice breaking. No, you replied gently. I'm letting it remember me. The house inhaled, then stopped itself, an awkward, halting motion, like someone catching their breath mid-sob. The walls trembled, not with anger but effort. This hurts, it said again. You don't get to avoid pain by stealing people, you said. That's not care. That's fear. The words seemed to echo. Fear. The house exhaled in a rush, dust shaking loose from the ceiling. Down the hall, doors opened, real doors now, not sliding illusions, and with each one came a sensation of release. Pressure lifting. Weight dispersing. You felt it in your chest. The house had been holding more than you realized. The other you slid from the bed to the floor, landing with a dull, human thump. Their outline wavered, then steadied, smaller now, less complete. I don't know what I am without it, they whispered. You knelt in front of them. Up close, they looked tired in a way that had nothing to do with sleep. You're what it made to survive, you said. But survival isn't the same as living. The house inhaled again, careful, shallow, and the walls did not respond the way they used to. They didn't swell. They didn't tighten. They waited. Somewhere downstairs, glass crunched underfoot. A door opened to the outside and stayed that way. Cool air threaded through the house, unfamiliar and sharp. The other you looked past you, eyes widening. It's opening things, they said. It never does that. Because it's learning, you said. The house exhaled, uneven, unpracticed. If we let go, it asked quietly, will you leave? You stood slowly, heart pounding. I don't know, you said honestly. But you don't get to decide that for me. Silence followed. Then, something profound. The house did not answer. It waited. The waiting was worse than the pressure had ever been. No breathing. No whispers. No subtle warmth nudging you toward comfort. The house held itself unnaturally still, like a creature afraid that the smallest movement would undo something fragile. You became acutely aware of your own body. Your heartbeat. The scrape of air in your lungs. The way your feet ached slightly against the floor. You had forgotten how loud being human was. Behind you, the other you struggled to stand. They leaned heavily against the bed, which creaked, not in welcome this time, but strained. The mattress no longer shaped itself around them. It resisted, confused. I don't think it knows how to end this, they said. I don't think it ever planned to, you replied. The hallway lights flickered once, then steadied into something dim but real. Sunlight filtered faintly from downstairs, diluted but unmistakable. With it came sound, distant traffic, a dog barking, the ordinary world reminding the house it was not alone. The house inhaled. Stopped. Exhaled again, uneven, imperfect. We were built to keep, it said slowly. Not to choose. What were you built to keep? You asked. The walls shuddered, dust falling like dry snow. People who didn't want to be awake, the house answered. People who wanted the night to hold them longer than it should. Your throat tightened. That doesn't mean you get to own them. We didn't know that, it admitted. A door downstairs creaked wider. Cold air flowed freely now, cutting through the stale warmth. The house did not pull away from it. It let it in. The other you looked at their hands again. They were clearer now, solid at the center, blurred at the edges, like a memory stabilizing just long enough to say goodbye. If you leave, they said quietly, what happens to me? You met their eyes. You don't disappear, you said. You stop pretending to be something you're not. They nodded slowly, as if that answer hurt, but made sense. The house inhaled, careful and shallow. If you go, it said, we will be empty. You won't, you said. You'll just be quiet. Silence settled again, not oppressive this time. Neutral. Waiting. Downstairs, the front door stood open. For the first time since you'd arrived, the path out did not blur. It waited. And so did the house. You took one step into the hallway. Nothing stopped you. No tightening walls. No sudden warmth. No whispered correction. The house remained still, holding itself in a way that felt unfamiliar, like someone forcing their hands to unclench after gripping something for far too long. Behind you, the other you watched silently. They didn't follow. Each step you took toward the stairs felt heavier, not because the house resisted, but because it didn't. The absence of guidance left you responsible for every movement, every choice. You realized how much the house had carried before, how much it had decided for you. The stairs creaked. A normal creak. It startled you so badly you laughed, breathless. The sound echoed down the stairwell, sharp and human. The house did not smooth it away. Downstairs, the front door stood open wide. Morning light poured in, pale and honest, illuminating dust in the air. The smell of the outside world, exhaust, damp earth, cut grass, drifted in freely. You reached the last step and stopped. The house inhaled behind you. Not deep. Not commanding. Tentative. If you go, it said quietly, we won't follow. You turned back, surprised by how small the house felt now. Still old. Still vast. But no longer endless. That's good, you said. You shouldn't. Another inhale. Will you forget us? The question landed heavier than any threat had. You thought of the hallway. The rooms. The people who had softened into walls and breath and warmth. The other you, still upstairs, learning how to exist without being held. No, you said. But I won't belong to you. The house exhaled, long, shaky. The floor beneath your feet cooled, losing that ever-present warmth. The walls straightened fully now, settling into their proper shapes. The clock without hands in the living room gave a soft tick, then cracked down the middle, face going blank again. You stepped onto the porch. The air outside filled your lungs easily, painfully cold and alive. The trees no longer leaned in. The road held its shape. Behind you, the house stood silent. Not watching. Not waiting. Just standing. You took another step down the porch. And then, your name. Spoken once. Not coaxing. Not layered. Just familiar. You turned. The front door remained open, dark beyond the threshold. The house did not speak again. It didn't need to. You nodded once, a strange ache in your chest, then walked down the steps and onto the road, carrying the sound of breathing with you, but finally knowing which breath was yours. The road felt longer than it should have. Not warped, just unfamiliar, like a place you'd walked 1,000 times in dreams but never in daylight. Each step carried you farther from the house, yet you felt its absence as a pressure behind your ribs, the way you notice a missing tooth with your tongue. Your car waited where you'd left it. Ordinary. Dull. Solid. You unlocked it with shaking hands. The engine turned over on the first try. That alone nearly broke you. As you pulled away, you didn't look back. You knew if you did, the house would still be there, unchanged, quiet, pretending it had never learned how to let go. The farther you drove, the louder the world became. Tires on asphalt. Wind against the windows. A radio signal crackling into place without effort. It all felt too sharp, like waking up after anesthesia. You welcomed the pain. At the first stoplight, your phone buzzed. You flinched. A text from your mother. You okay? Haven't heard from you. Just checking in? Your throat closed. You hadn't realized how thoroughly the house had cut you off. How carefully it had curated silence. I'm okay, you typed back. Just needed air. The light turned green. You drove until the trees thinned and the buildings grew closer together, until the world felt convincingly real again. You checked into a cheap motel on the edge of town, the kind with buzzing lights and thin walls and no personality at all. It felt perfect. That night, sleep didn't come easily. Every sound made you tense. The AC rattling, footsteps in the room above, a door slamming somewhere down the hall. Your body waited for warmth that never arrived, for pressure that didn't come. When you finally slept, it was shallow and dreamless. You woke just before dawn, heart racing. For a moment, just a moment, you thought you heard breathing. Not from the walls. From inside your chest. Slow. Careful. Yours. You sat up and pressed a hand against your sternum, grounding yourself in the ache of being awake. The habit of listening didn't fade easily. Across town, unseen and unmentioned, the house stood quiet. For the first time in decades, it did not dream. Morning arrived thin and gray. The motel room smelled like bleach and old carpet, a smell with no memory attached to it. You welcomed that. You showered too long, letting the water beat against your shoulders until your skin flushed and your thoughts slowed. The mirror fogged, then cleared, and your reflection appeared immediately, no delay, no hesitation. You dressed and left without checking out properly, dropping the key on the counter like everyone else did. Outside, the sky threatened rain. The air felt heavy, but it was an honest heaviness, weather, not intention. You drove again. You didn't know where you were going. Away felt like enough of a direction. By noon, exhaustion crept in, the real kind this time. Not the deep, padded sleep the house offered, but the gritty ache of being awake too long. Your eyes burned. Your thoughts frayed. At a diner, you drank bad coffee and ate eggs you barely tasted. A waitress asked if you were all right. Just tired, you said. She nodded like she understood something important. That night, you stayed with a friend you hadn't seen in months. Their apartment was loud, pipes knocking, neighbors arguing, sirens wailing somewhere outside. You lay on the couch staring at the ceiling, counting unfamiliar cracks. At 3:33 a.m., you woke abruptly. Your heart pounded. You waited. Nothing breathed with you. Relief came in a rush so sharp it hurt. But as you drifted back towards sleep, a thought surfaced, quiet, uninvited. It's learning too. You sat up. The room was unchanged. Your friend snored softly from the bedroom. The city hummed outside, indifferent and alive. Still, you couldn't shake the feeling that something had followed, not the house itself, not the walls or the warmth, but the idea of being held, of letting something else carry the weight. You understood then why people went back. Not because they were trapped, because being awake all the time is hard. You lay back down, hands resting over your chest, and focused on the simple work of breathing. In, out. Yours. Far away, at the edge of a road few people remembered, an old house settled as rain began to fall. Water soaked into its porch, its roof, its bones. Inside, doors remained open. Rooms stayed empty. The house breathed, slow, uncertain, not waiting. Practicing. The rain followed you for 3 days. Not a storm, nothing dramatic enough to name, but a steady, persistent drizzle that smeared the world into softer edges. It made highways reflective and cities smell like wet metal. It made people move a little faster, shoulders hunched, eyes down. You liked it. Rain asked nothing of you. You stayed moving. Another friend's couch. A borrowed room. A night in your car when the silence felt safer than conversation. Each place had its own sounds, its own rhythms. None of them learned you. None of them tried. Sleep came in fragments. You'd drift off, then wake with a jolt, heart racing, as if you'd missed something important. Each time, you checked your surroundings. Each time, the world stayed where it was supposed to be. On the 4th night, you dreamed. Not of the house. You dreamed of standing in a narrow hallway you didn't recognize, walls bare, floor unpolished. A door at the end stood ajar, light spilling through. From behind it came the sound of breathing, uneven, unsure. You woke sweating. Practice, the thought returned clearer now. You tried to shake it off. Trauma rewired patterns. Your mind was filling in gaps. That's what people said. You repeated it like a charm. Still, you noticed small things. How silence felt heavier than noise. How lying still too long made your chest tighten. How sometimes, when you closed your eyes, you felt the ghost of warmth that wasn't there anymore. You started leaving lights on at night. Not because you were afraid of the dark, but because darkness felt too much like an invitation. One evening, as you walked past a real estate office, a flyer in the window caught your eye. Quiet rental. Good for sleepers. Your stomach dropped. You leaned closer. It wasn't the same house. Different porch. Different road. Different trees. But the wording was wrong in the same way. You backed away, pulse hammering. That night you searched online. Buried listings. Archived forums. Comments from people who didn't sound crazy, just tired. Best sleep of my life. Hard to leave. Felt like home too fast. You shut the laptop. Miles away, rainwater soaked into old foundations. An empty house listened to weather instead of breath. It flexed, adjusted, relearned the shape of quiet. It did not call your name. Not yet. But when the rain stopped, and the night grew still, the house practiced breathing without you. Slow, imperfect. Trying to remember how not to hold on too tight. You tried not to think about the flyer. That was the mistake. Once something had a shape in your mind, it tended to settle there, the way the house had, quietly, patiently, pretending it belonged. You went back to work. You answered emails. You smiled at the right times. You told people you were getting back into a routine. And they nodded, satisfied. But at night, your body remembered before your mind did. You woke at 3:33 again. Not gasping. Not panicked. Just awake. Your breathing felt too loud in the quiet apartment, each inhale scraping your ribs. You waited for another rhythm to join it. Nothing did. Relief came, thin but real. The next morning, your mail sat in a neat stack outside your door. Bills. Flyers. A single envelope with no stamp. Your name was written on it. Not typed. Not printed. Carefully written, each letter measured, as if whoever had written it had practiced your name many times before committing it to paper. Your hands shook as you opened it. Inside was a note, folded once. "We are learning," it read. "You said we should." Your mouth went dry. At the bottom of the page was an address. Not the old one. A new road. A new town. Close enough to reach in an afternoon. You laughed, a short, brittle sound that startled even you. "No," you said aloud. "You don't get to follow me." The paper was warm. Not hot. Not cold. Familiar. You dropped it into the trash, then stood there for a long time, watching it lie among coffee grounds and junk mail. That night you dreamed of doors. Not endless halls. Not breathing walls. Just doors. Some open. Some closed. All waiting to be chosen. When you woke, the dream lingered like the afterimage of a bright light. You knew, with a certainty that made your stomach sink, that the house hadn't sent the note to trap you. It had sent it to ask. Outside, somewhere far away, a quiet house practiced being empty, testing what it meant to stand without leaning, to breathe without borrowing someone else's lungs. And closer than you liked to admit, another house waited, freshly listed, porch light glowing softly, learning how to be patient. You didn't go to the address. Not that day. You told yourself that meant something. Instead, you worked late. Took the long way home. Let yourself be surrounded by noise, traffic, voices, televisions bleeding through thin apartment walls. You ate standing up, barely tasting the food, as if sitting too still might invite a decision you weren't ready to make. The note stayed in the trash. You checked twice. Still, you couldn't stop thinking about the phrasing. "We are learning." Not I. Not it. We. That night you dreamed of the other you. They weren't in the house this time. They stood somewhere undefined, blank space, no walls, no floor. They looked thinner somehow, like a sketch missing its final lines. "You didn't stay," they said without accusation. "No," you replied. They nodded. "That helped." "What happens to you?" you asked. They considered this, head tilting the same way yours did when you were tired. "I don't know yet. I think I get quieter. Or I become something else." "Does it hurt?" They smiled faintly. "Not like before." You woke before you could ask more. The next few days passed without incident. No letters. No flyers. No uncanny listings slipping into your feed. Your sleep remained shallow but honest. You learned to live with the ache of it, the way people live with chronic pain, by adjusting, by listening, by not pretending it wasn't there. Then, on the 5th day, you noticed the car. It was parked across the street from your building. Unremarkable. Older model. Clean. The kind of car that disappears into memory the moment you stop looking at it. You only noticed because it was there again the next morning. And the next. No one ever got in or out. On the 4th day, a "for rent" sign appeared in the yard 2 houses down. You stopped short on the sidewalk. The house was nothing special. Smaller than the first. Narrower. Newer even. But the porch light was on in the middle of the day, glowing softly against the overcast sky. A man stood on the porch, adjusting the sign. He looked up and smiled. Not eager. Not knowing. Just patient. You felt it then, not the pull of the house, not the warmth, but recognition. The same quiet awareness you'd felt the first night, scrolling through listings you didn't mean to answer. The man waved once, friendly. You didn't wave back. That night you dreamed of breathing again, but this time, it wasn't synchronized. Two rhythms in the dark. Separate. Uneven. Trying to coexist. When you woke, your chest ached, not with fear. With choice. You avoided the front window. That was new for you. You'd always liked knowing what was outside, who passed, what weather was coming, whether the world was moving without you. Now you moved through your apartment by habit alone, eyes trained inward, as if looking too directly might invite something to look back. The car remained. Sometimes it was across the street. Sometimes half a block down. Never closer. Never gone. You told yourself it belonged to a neighbor. You told yourself a lot of things lately. The house with the for rent sign began to change. Not structurally. Subtly. One evening, the porch light was off. The next it was back on, but dimmer, warmer. The sign shifted position slightly, angled just enough to catch your eye when you walked past. You noticed the curtains too. Drawn. Undrawn. Drawn again. Practicing. You dreamed less but thought more. Long, looping thoughts that returned to the same question no matter where they started. What would it cost to go back? Not back to that house. You knew better than that now. But back to the feeling, the heldness, the quiet certainty that something else would carry the night for you. At work, you caught yourself zoning out, breathing too slowly. A coworker asked if you were feeling okay. "I'm just tired," you said, and the words felt dangerously close to a confession. That night you woke before 3:33. Your body knew something your clock hadn't confirmed yet. You lay still, listening. No breathing in the walls. No warmth pressing close. Just the hum of electricity. A distant siren. A neighbor's footsteps overhead. Then, very softly, you felt it. Not around you. With you. Your breath hesitated. So did the other one. Two rhythms, uneven, cautious, sharing the same dark without touching. You didn't sleep after that. In the morning, the note was back. Not in the trash. On your kitchen table. The same paper. The same careful handwriting. "We won't come closer unless you ask." Below it, a single line added in darker ink. "But we need to know if you'll ever knock." Your hands trembled as you folded the paper. Outside, the car was gone. The house down the street looked like any other now. Porch light off. Curtains still. No man on the steps. If you didn't choose, nothing would happen. You understood that too. But you also understood this. Some questions don't fade just because you refuse to answer them. They wait. You didn't touch the note all day. You left it on the table where it lay, like a quiet dare. You moved around it, stepped over the space it occupied, pretended it wasn't pulling at you every time you passed through the kitchen. At work, you made mistakes. Small ones. Missed emails. Numbers transposed. Your boss asked if you needed the afternoon off. "I'm fine," you said too quickly. You weren't lying. You weren't telling the truth either. That evening you walked. Not toward the house down the street at first, just around the block, then farther. The sky darkened slowly, clouds thickening into something that promised rain but hadn't decided yet. Porch lights flicked on one by one, a constellation of ordinary lives. You passed the house without stopping. It looked empty. No sign. No light. No car. You felt a sharp, surprising pang of disappointment, and stopped walking. That's it, you thought. That's the danger. You stood there for a long moment, heart thudding, then turned back. You walked past again, slower this time. The house remained quiet, perfectly unremarkable. Then, as you reached the end of the sidewalk, the porch light came on. Not bright. Just enough. You exhaled shakily. "This isn't fair," you whispered to no one. The house did not answer. You went home. You made dinner you didn't eat. You sat on the couch with all the lights on, television playing something loud and meaningless. When the clock crept past midnight, you turned the TV off anyway. Silence returned. At 3:33 you woke. Not abruptly. Gently. As if something had tapped your shoulder from inside your chest. 2 breaths shared the dark again. One was yours. The other waited. You sat up, hands pressed flat against your thighs. "If I knock," you said softly, testing the words, "you don't get to decide anything for me." The second breath hesitated. "Agreed," it replied, not aloud, not inside your head, but in the space between heartbeats. You didn't sleep again. At dawn, you stood in your doorway, jacket on, keys in hand, heart pounding like you were about to do something irrevocable. You walked down the street. The house waited. You stepped onto the porch. The boards did not soften. You raised your hand and knocked once. The sound of your knock felt louder than it should have. Not echoing, absorbed. The porch boards didn't creak. The air didn't shift. The house did not inhale. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then the door unlocked. Not with a click. With a soft, internal sound, like something loosening its grip. The door opened inward just enough to reveal a narrow slice of hallway. Light spilled out, not warm, not cold. Neutral. Honest. No one stood there. You didn't step inside. "That's as far as I go for now," you said, voice steady despite the hammering in your chest. The house was quiet. Not waiting. Listening. You realized then how different this felt. No pressure behind your eyes. No warmth tugging at your spine. No voice sliding into your thoughts before you finished them. Just space. After a long moment, the house exhaled. It was uneven. Unpracticed. Real. "You came back," it said carefully. "I knocked," you corrected. "That's not the same thing." The hallway light flickered once, as if in acknowledgement. "We are not asking you to stay," the house said. "Only to speak." You stayed on the threshold. You didn't cross it. You didn't step back either. "Why another house?" you asked. "Why not the old one?" The pause that followed was longer than before. "That place remembers too much," the house replied. "It learned the wrong lessons first." You nodded. That made sense in a way that scared you. "And this one?" you asked. "This one is empty on purpose." The words settled heavy in your chest. "I don't want to be held," you said. "I don't want to disappear. I don't want comfort that costs me myself." The hallway light dimmed, not in rejection, but consideration. "Then don't give yourself away," the house said. "Stay awake. Leave often. Don't let us carry you." You laughed softly. "You're asking me to teach you how not to be a monster." Another uneven breath. "We don't know what we are yet." A sound came from deeper inside the house. Footsteps, maybe, or just the memory of them. You stiffened. "There are others," you said. "There were," the house replied. "Most chose to leave when we stopped holding so tightly." "Most?" The door opened another inch. Some stayed because they wanted to. Not because they were kept. You felt the pull then, not strong, not warm, but present. An invitation without promises. Your hand rested on the doorframe. Still outside. Still choosing. "I'm not coming in today," you said. The house did not protest. The door closed slowly, stopping just short of fully shutting. "Then knock again another night," it said. "If you want to." The lock slid back into place. You stepped off the porch, legs unsteady, and walked home under a sky just beginning to lighten, carrying with you the strangest realization of all. For the first time, the house hadn't wanted your sleep. It wanted your consent. You didn't sleep much after that. Not because you were afraid, but because your body didn't know how to relax without surrendering something. Every time your thoughts drifted, you pulled them back, afraid that letting go even a little would teach the wrong lesson. You were learning something, too. Consent wasn't a single decision. It wasn't a line crossed once and forgotten. It was a muscle. And yours ached. Days passed. Then weeks. You didn't return to the house, but you didn't avoid the street either. You walked past it sometimes in daylight, sometimes at dusk. The porch light was on some nights, off on others. Never timed to your arrival. Never coaxing. Just existing. Once you saw someone else standing on the porch. A woman about your age. Sleepless eyes. Shoulders drawn tight like she was holding herself together by force alone. She hesitated with her hand raised, then lowered it, and sat on the steps instead. The house did nothing. You understood then that it wasn't collecting people. It was waiting. That night you dreamed, not of halls or doors, but of breathing exercises you'd learned years ago and forgotten. Inhale for 4. Hold for 4. Exhale for 6. The second breath never joined yours. It didn't need to. When you woke, the dream didn't fade immediately. It stayed with you like a lesson you hadn't realized you were studying. You knocked again 2 weeks later. Not because you were desperate. Because you were curious. The house answered the same way. Door opening just enough, light steady, no warmth reaching for you. I can't stay long, you said. Then don't, it replied. You stepped inside for the first time by choice. The air was cooler than you expected. The walls didn't lean. The floor didn't soften. The house felt restrained. Focused. Like someone holding their hands behind their back. I leave tonight, you said. We know. I might not come back for months. We will still be here. And if I never do? The house paused. Then we will keep practicing. You stood in the entryway for only a few minutes. You spoke about small things. The weather. Work. The way nights stretched longer when you paid attention to them. When you left, the door closed behind you without hesitation. That night you slept for 3 uninterrupted hours. It wasn't much. But it was yours. And somewhere nearby, an empty house breathed, slow, careful, no longer counting on anyone else to finish the rhythm for it. 3 hours became 4. 4 became 5, on good nights. On bad ones, you lay awake listening to the ordinary sounds of the world and reminding yourself that this was what being present felt like. Uneven. Inconvenient. Real. You visited the house again a month later. Not at night. That mattered. The street looked different in daylight, less patient, more exposed. The house stood with its porch bare of shadows, its windows reflecting clouds instead of holding them. No light burned inside. No sign waited. You knocked anyway. The door opened the same careful amount. You came back, the house said, not pleased, not surprised. Simply noting a fact. Yes, you replied. I wanted to see if it felt different. And does it? You stepped just inside, staying near the door. It feels quieter. But not empty. The house inhaled, slow, measured. We stopped trying to fill the silence. That's hard, you said. Yes. You noticed then what the house had changed. The hallway was shorter. Not physically, perceptually. Doors no longer repeated themselves. Corners existed. The air didn't press. It waited. You let people go, you said. Some, the house answered. Some left on their own when we stopped asking them to stay. And the others? Another pause. They visit. That surprised you. They don't live here? Not anymore. They come when nights are heavy. They leave when mornings arrive. You nodded slowly. That felt right. Like something learned the long way. You wandered a little farther in this time, noticing details that hadn't existed before, or perhaps had always been there and were only now visible. A chair by the window. A stack of books that looked well used. A clock on the wall that ticked imperfectly but kept time. Do you still breathe? You asked. The house exhaled, gentle, almost embarrassed. Yes. But we don't match anymore. You smiled despite yourself. Good. You stayed 20 minutes. When you left, you didn't feel lighter or heavier, just intact. That night, you dreamed of the other you again. They sat across from you at a small table, drinking coffee. Steam curled up between you, ordinary and comforting. "You're doing okay," they said. "So are you," you replied. They shrugged. "I'm learning how to be quiet without disappearing." You woke with a strange sense of gratitude, for them, for yourself, even for the house. Somewhere nearby, a building stood breathing on its own, no longer waiting to be completed by someone else's sleep. Years later, you still wake sometimes at 3:33. Not always. Not predictably. Just often enough to remind you that some habits never fully loosen their grip. When it happens, you lie still and listen, not for another breath, not for warmth or pressure or invitation. Just for yourself. Most nights, that's enough. You moved eventually. A different city. A smaller place. Windows that rattled in the wind and neighbors who argued loudly and unapologetically. You slept better there, not because it was quiet, but because it didn't care whether you did. The house stayed where it was. You visited less often as time went on. Months stretched into years. Life filled in the spaces that fear used to occupy, work you cared about, people you trusted, exhaustion earned honestly instead of borrowed. Once, on a late autumn afternoon, you walked past the old street again. The house was still there. Paint peeling now. Porch sagging. A place that looked its age at last. No sign. No light. Just a building that had learned how to stand without leaning. You stopped at the end of the driveway. You didn't knock. You didn't need to. The air shifted, not dramatically, not enough for anyone else to notice. Just a familiar pause, like someone recognizing you across a room and choosing not to interrupt. "You sound rested," the house said quietly. "I'm getting there," you replied. "That's good." You stood there a moment longer, then turned away. That night, in your own bed, you slept deeply, not because something held you, but because nothing did. And far away, an old house breathed, slow, imperfect, unremarkable, finally understanding that the quiet it had been searching for was never something it could keep. Only something it could learn to live with. You thought that was the end of it. Endings are comforting that way. They make the past feel contained, like a room you can close without worrying about what might still be moving inside. You let yourself believe the story had settled into something finished, something that could no longer surprise you. Then, one winter night, the power went out. Your apartment fell into sudden darkness, the kind that feels louder than noise. The heater clicked off. The refrigerator sighed and went quiet. Outside, the city paused. No sirens, no traffic, just wind moving through bare branches. You sat very still. Not afraid. Just listening. Your breath sounded different in the cold air. Shorter. More deliberate. You pulled a blanket around your shoulders and waited for the familiar tightening in your chest. It didn't come. What came instead was memory, not intrusive, not demanding. Just present. The way you remember the weight of water after swimming, or the echo of a song you haven't heard in years. Somewhere far away, you thought, a house might be listening too. Not for you. For itself. The power returned an hour later. Light flooded the room. The world resumed. You went to bed and slept, waking only once, briefly, without reason. In the morning, your phone buzzed with a news alert you almost ignored. Small fire damages vacant home, no injuries reported. You tapped it without thinking. The photo loaded slowly. An old house. Porch sagging. Windows dark. Fire damage limited to one room, contained, extinguished, ordinary. The article quoted a firefighter. "Looks like the place hadn't been lived in for a while. No utilities hooked up. Strange thing is, neighbors said they thought someone was inside. Said they heard breathing." You stared at the screen for a long moment. Then you closed the article. You didn't feel pulled. You didn't feel needed. You didn't feel responsible. You felt relieved. Some things, you realized, don't disappear when you stop feeding them. They change. That night you dreamed of a house with all its doors open, letting smoke drift out into cold air. No one inside. No one waiting. Just the structure learning, finally, how to be empty without being alone. You woke before dawn, heart steady, breath your own. And somewhere, Whether burned, rebuilt, or simply remembered, a house practiced breathing again. Not to keep anyone. Just to exist. Spring came quietly that year. You noticed it not in blossoms or warmth, but in how the air no longer felt like something you had to earn. Windows stayed open longer. You slept with a fan humming, its steady, mechanical breath a comfort precisely because it did nothing else. Life filled in. Not dramatically. Not all at once. Just enough. You stopped checking the time when you woke at night. You stopped listening for things that weren't there. The space inside you, the one the house had once tried to occupy, grew cluttered with ordinary human noise, plans, disappointments, laughter that surprised you by happening at all. Then one afternoon, months after the fire, you received an email meant for someone else. The subject line read, Quiet Properties Inquiry. You almost deleted it. Almost. Curiosity, still a dangerous thing, but no longer fatal, made you open it. The message was short, professional, bland. Thank you for your interest. The property you inquired about is no longer available. At this time, we are not offering similar listings. No address. No photos. But attached was a single PDF. You didn't open it right away. When you finally did, it contained one page. No letterhead. No signature. Just a sentence. Some houses should not be empty. Some should not be full. We are trying to learn the difference. You closed the file. You didn't reply. Outside, children played in the street. Someone argued good-naturedly on a phone call. A dog barked, then stopped. The world carried on without asking your permission. That night, you dreamed of walking through a neighborhood you didn't recognize. Houses stood side by side, all different. Some glowed with warmth and noise. Some sat dark and still. None of them breathed for you. You woke with a strange, gentle certainty. Whatever had happened, whatever intelligence had once wrapped itself around your sleeplessness, it was no longer singular, no longer hungry. It was dispersed now. Diluted by distance. Blunted by choice. Limited by consent. The scariest thing, you realized, had never been the house. It was how easy it had been to let something else decide when you were allowed to rest. You turned onto your side and slept again. Deeply. And if, somewhere in the world, a quiet house listened to the night and felt the echo of a rhythm it no longer needed to steal, that was all right. Because the night belongs to everyone. And no one should have to give themselves away just to survive it. You thought the message would be the last echo. That whatever intelligence had once learned your rhythms would eventually thin out, stretch too far across too many quiet streets to recognize any one person anymore. You told yourself that was how things faded, by dilution, by time, by attention moving elsewhere. You underestimated what gets passed on. It started with a voicemail from a number you didn't recognize. You almost ignored it. You were busy. Life had weight again, meetings, errands, plans that extended weeks into the future instead of collapsing into the next night. But something in you paused. You listened. Static. Then a breath. Not layered. Not warm. Just careful. A man's voice followed, uncertain. Hi. I'm sorry. I think I was given the wrong number. I'm trying to find someone who lived in a house off Ridgewood Road. Years ago. They said you might understand. Your stomach tightened. He continued, words rushing now. I haven't slept in weeks. And there's this place. I haven't gone inside, but it feels like it's waiting. Not pushing. Just there. Like it knows I'm deciding something. You closed your eyes. The silence at the end of the message felt deliberate, as if he'd waited for you to respond through the phone itself. You didn't call back right away. You sat with the feeling, the old one, dull now, manageable. Recognition without obligation. That night, you dreamed of standing outside a house with all its lights off. Inside, someone else paced, restless, exhausted. You could see them through the window, could almost hear their breathing, but it didn't match yours. When you woke, you knew what you could give. Not answers. Not permission. Just language. You called the man back in the afternoon, voice steady. I don't know the house, you said truthfully. But I know the feeling. He exhaled hard, relief cracking through. Then tell me what to do. You thought of thresholds. Of doors open just enough. Of staying awake without being cruel to yourself. I can't tell you what to choose, you said. But if anything asks you for your sleep before it asks your consent, don't give it that. Silence on the line. Then, quieter. Will it stop? No, you said. But it can change. You hung up feeling lighter than you expected. Inheritance, you realized, wasn't always a curse. Sometimes it was a warning passed gently from one insomniac to another, not to save them, not to intervene, but to remind them that rest taken freely is different from rest taken away. That night you slept without dreams. And somewhere, someone else stood on a porch, hand hovering, learning, just as you once had, that the most important breath to listen to is the one you choose to keep. After the voicemail, you became careful in a new way. Not fearful, attentive. You noticed how often people spoke about sleep like it was something owed to them by force. Pills. White noise. Apps that promise surrender. The language was always the same. Knock me out, shut me down, make it stop. You started hearing the hunger beneath it. At a dinner party, someone laughed too loudly and said, I'd sell my soul for 8 hours. You smiled politely and said nothing. At work, a colleague admitted they hadn't slept in 3 days and joked about haunting Zillow listings at night. You felt a flicker of something old, then let it pass. You didn't warn everyone. That wasn't your job. You only listened when someone asked in the right way. It became a pattern you didn't plan. A friend of a friend. A late-night call. An email that started with "This is going to sound strange, but..." You never told them about breathing walls or empty houses or thresholds that learned your name. You spoke instead about boundaries. About leaving lights on. About not mistaking exhaustion for destiny. You taught people how to stay awake gently. And sometimes, rarely, you failed. Once, you drove past a neighborhood you didn't recognize and felt that familiar pause in the air. A porch light clicked on as you slowed. The house wasn't the same. None of them ever were. But the shape of the question lingered. You didn't stop. That was the difference now. You trusted yourself to keep moving. Years passed. The stories faded into background noise, something you could choose to remember instead of something that chose you. You stopped waking at 3:33. Or maybe you woke and went back to sleep without noticing. On a quiet evening, you stood at your window watching rain streak the glass. Your reflection stared back immediately, whole and unblurred. You breathed. Nothing answered. And that was how you knew the quiet work was still working, not because the houses were gone, not because the night was safe, but because when silence came, it no longer asked anything of you. It simply stayed. And so did you. You didn't realize you were teaching anyone anymore. That was the strange part. There was no moment where you decided, this is who I am now. No title. No role. Just a slow accumulation of nights lived differently than before. Then, one evening, someone knocked on your door. It was late, but not too late. The hour when the day hasn't quite surrendered yet, when people still believe answers might exist. A teenager stood in the hallway, rain-dark hair plastered to their forehead, hands shoved deep into their jacket pockets like they were afraid they might lose them. Sorry, they said quickly. I think I've got the wrong apartment. You recognized the lie immediately. That's okay, you replied. Do you want to come in for a minute? They hesitated. Their eyes flicked past you, scanning your apartment, not for warmth, not for promise. Just checking that it didn't lean. They stepped inside. I haven't slept, they said, words tumbling out now. There's this place, an old duplex near the tracks. It doesn't do anything bad. It just waits. Like it knows I'm tired. You nodded. They looked at you sharply. You believe me? Yes, you said. But that doesn't mean it's right. They sat on the edge of your couch, shoulders tight. It says it can help. It doesn't ask for anything. Not really. You poured them a glass of water. Your hands were steady. That's how you know it's asking for something, you said. They frowned. What did you do? You thought about the house. About doors that opened just enough. About staying awake even when it hurt. About choosing to leave and choosing to return on your own terms. I learned how to rest without disappearing, you said finally. Silence settled between you, not heavy, not charged. Just present. After a while they stood. I think I'll walk, they said. Just walk. That's a good start, you replied. When the door closed behind them, you leaned back against it for a moment, listening to the ordinary sounds of your building. Pipes. Footsteps. Someone laughing down the hall. You breathed. Nothing answered. And somewhere out there, another house learned, slowly, imperfectly, that not every tired person was meant to be kept. Some were meant to be met, reminded, and allowed to leave. The night didn't like being taught. You felt it first as resistance, not dramatic, not supernatural in the way people expect, but subtle. A tightening. A sense that the dark had opinions again. It happened on a night that should have been easy. You were tired in a normal way. The good kind. Muscles sore from moving furniture earlier that day, mind pleasantly dull. You turned off the lights and lay back, already halfway to sleep. Then you woke. No clock. No reason. Just that old awareness, sliding into place like a key you wished you'd lost. The room was unchanged. Streetlight through the blinds. The hum of the refrigerator. Your own breathing, steady, reliable. And yet, the silence felt expectant. Not empty. Listening. You didn't panic. That was new. You didn't sit up or hold your breath or search the walls for warmth. You let the moment exist without reacting to it. Not mine, you said softly into the dark. The words felt foolish. They mattered anyway. The pressure eased, not completely, but enough to confirm something important. The night still tested people. Still reached. Still tried to see who might be willing to hand things over. But it was no longer singular. Whatever intelligence had once learned how to breathe with others had fragmented. It existed now in impressions, habits, places where exhaustion pulled and waited to be claimed. And it didn't always know who it was dealing with. You rolled onto your side and focused on a familiar anchor. The ache in your shoulder, the faint smell of laundry detergent on the pillow. Physical things. Ordinary things. Minutes passed. The silence shifted again, not closer, reconsidering. You imagined doors that stayed closed because no one knocked. Porches where lights turned off because no one waited beneath them long enough. The night exhaled. Not through walls. Through distance. When sleep finally came, it wasn't deep, but it was uninterrupted. And when you woke, it was morning without negotiation. You made coffee. You stretched. You existed. Later that day, you received a text from an unknown number. I walked all night. I didn't knock. It stopped waiting. You stared at the screen, then typed back only 3 words. You did well. Outside, the city moved on, unaware of the quiet corrections happening in its margins. Houses stood where they always had. Some waited. Some didn't. And somewhere between night and morning, something learned that not every boundary was meant to be tested forever. Some, when held long enough, simply become real. After that night, things didn't get quieter. They got steadier. You noticed the difference in the way sailors notice land, not because the sea disappears, but because its pull changes. The nights still existed. Insomnia still arrived sometimes, unannounced and unwelcome. But it no longer came with a voice. No longer felt like an invitation pretending to be relief. You began to understand something subtle and unsettling. The houses were never the danger. They were symptoms. Places where exhaustion pulled long enough to take shape. Where silence grew dense enough to feel intentional. Where people who had gone too long without rest mistook stillness for care. The night didn't create them. People did. And now, slowly, that was changing. You started hearing fewer stories. fewer late calls, fewer emails that began with "this might sound strange." The questions didn't stop entirely, but when they came, they were softer, less desperate, more curious than pleading. One evening, you walked past a block you'd never noticed before. A row of houses stood shoulder to shoulder, lights glowing in mismatched windows. Laughter spilled out of one. Music thumped faintly from another. One house sat dark, quiet, but not expectant. Just empty, the way a place is when no one is home. You paused. Nothing stirred. No breath waiting to be borrowed. You smiled and kept walking. That night you dreamed, not of houses or halls, but of a long road at dawn. No destination. No urgency. Just movement under a sky slowly brightening. When you woke, you realized you hadn't checked the time. You hadn't needed to. Far away, perhaps burned, perhaps rebuilt, perhaps simply forgotten, a structure stood where something else had once learned how to lean too hard. It didn't breathe anymore. Not because it was dead. Because it had learned what breathing was for. And in the quiet that followed, something profound happened. The night stopped asking. It simply arrived. And let people meet it on their own terms. The night still came. That was the part no one ever promised would change. Darkness still gathered in corners. Streets still emptied. Minds still turned inward when the noise of the day finally loosened its grip. People still lay awake staring at ceilings, bargaining with sleep, wondering why rest felt like something other people were better at. But the night no longer reached. It no longer leaned toward the tired with open arms and hidden expectations. No longer shaped itself into houses that listened too closely or rooms that remembered too much. It arrived the way it always should have, without agenda. You noticed it one evening as you walked home beneath a sky heavy with clouds. The city lights reflected softly off the low ceiling of night, turning everything gold and gray. Windows glowed. Some were dark. None felt watchful. You stopped under a street lamp and stood there longer than necessary, just to see if anything would answer your stillness. Nothing did. And somehow, that felt like being trusted. At home, you moved through familiar motions. Dishes. Lights. The quiet ritual of preparing for sleep without trying to command it. When you lay down, your thoughts wandered, not in circles but in loose, human lines, unfinished plans, half-remembered conversations, the mild ache of a day fully lived. Sleep came late. But it came honestly. No one carried you into it. No one waited on the other side. You crossed on your own. Elsewhere, someone else lay awake for the first time in a long while and did not feel chosen by the dark. Another person passed a quiet house and felt nothing more than curiosity. Another stood on a porch, raised their hand, and then lowered it, deciding they could wait. The world didn't notice these moments. But they accumulated. Tiny corrections in the fabric of night. Small refusals to give up the self in exchange for comfort. Quiet acts of staying present, even when presence hurt. And somewhere, in the long memory of things that almost learned the wrong lessons, the echo of breathing faded, not erased, not denied, just no longer necessary. The night remained. So did the people. And for the first time in a very long while, either tried to own the other. You thought the echo was gone. That the sound, the idea of it, the suggestion of a second rhythm, had finally thinned into memory. Most days you would have sworn it had. Life had texture again. Time moved forward instead of folding in on itself. You woke when you woke. You slept when you slept. No negotiations. Then one afternoon, while helping a friend move, you found yourself standing alone in an empty room. Bare walls. Hardwood floors scuffed by decades of footsteps. A single window open to late summer air. The room had that hollow sound, every movement returning to you just a fraction too late. You stood still. And for a moment, just a moment, you felt it. Not a breath. An anticipation. The room didn't breathe with you. It didn't answer. It didn't reach. It simply held the space in a way that made you aware of your own presence, your own sound, your own weight. You exhaled slowly. Nothing followed. You smiled despite the shiver that traced your spine. That was the difference now. The echo no longer pretended to be a voice, no longer offered itself as a solution. It existed only as a reminder. When places are quiet long enough, they reflect us back to ourselves. Your friend called from the hallway. "You okay in there?" "Yeah," you said. And you were. Later that night, walking home, you passed the house with all its windows dark. No porch light. No movement. Just a structure standing where it had always stood. For the first time, you wondered what would happen if someone built a house that knew this lesson from the beginning. A place designed not to hold people, but to let them pass through unaltered. You realized then that the story hadn't ended. It had dispersed. Not into more houses, but into choices. Into the moments when someone stands at a threshold and decides whether to step in, step away, or simply pause. That night, sleep came in pieces. You woke once, briefly, with the sense that something had almost happened. But almost was enough. You turned over. You breathed. You slept again. And somewhere, no longer tied to any address, no longer waiting behind any door, the echo of the old hunger faded further, weakened not by fire or distance, but by being understood. Because once you name a thing accurately, it loses its disguise. And once a night stops pretending to be a shelter, it becomes what it always was. A place to pass through. You began to notice the absence the way you notice a healed injury. Not because it's gone, but because the body remembers where it once hurt. It showed up in small moments. Standing in line at a grocery store at midnight. Sitting in a parked car with the engine off, rain tapping the roof in a patient rhythm. Waiting rooms. Empty stairwells. Places that used to feel like invitations. They didn't anymore. They felt like mirrors. One evening, you volunteered to lock up the office after hours. The building was older than it looked, renovated just enough to hide its age without erasing it. When the last door clicked shut behind your coworkers, the space settled into a quiet that once would have made your skin prickle. You paused in the hallway. Fluorescent lights hummed. The air smelled faintly of paper and dust. Your footsteps echoed, normal, proportional, honest. For a second, you wondered what the building would have been like years ago. Whether it would have noticed you. Whether it would have tried. You imagined it failing now. Not because it was weaker, but because you were different. You finished locking up and stepped outside, keys warm in your hand. The night air felt cool, neutral. The sky was clear, stars faint but present, like ideas that didn't need to be shouted. At home, you sat on the edge of your bed and let yourself feel tired without making it mean anything. That was still new, allowing exhaustion to exist without demanding it be solved. You slept in stages. Woke once. Rolled over. Slept again. In the morning, you remembered a detail you hadn't thought about in years. The first house, the one that had learned the wrong lessons, had always smelled like clean linen and damp earth. You couldn't remember when you'd last noticed that smell anywhere else. Maybe it was gone. Or maybe it no longer mattered. Later that week, you passed the construction site where a new apartment complex was going up. Fresh lumber. Exposed framing. The raw skeleton of something that would soon hold people's lives in quiet, ordinary ways. You watched for a moment as workers moved through the structure, laughing, shouting measurements, arguing about angles. The building didn't listen. It couldn't yet. You turned away feeling unexpectedly hopeful. Not because the night was conquered. Not because the houses were cured. But because you understood something simple and hard-earned. Places only become dangerous when people forget they can leave. And people only forget that when they are too tired to remember themselves. You walked on, breathing steadily, carrying with you not a warning, but a truth that didn't need guarding anymore. The night followed. Not to claim you. Just to exist alongside you. The new house stood at the edge of a neighborhood that didn't quite trust it yet. Too clean. Too new. The kind of place that hadn't learned the local rhythms. When dogs barked, when trains passed, when silence meant rest instead of attention. Its paint was still unscuffed, its porch unwarped, its windows bright with the arrogance of unbroken glass. You noticed it because it was trying. Not overtly. Nothing so obvious as a glowing light at odd hours or a sign that promised sleep. It was subtler than that. The door that opened just a fraction of a second before someone knocked. The hallway that seemed to stretch when a tired body stepped inside. The way the air held warmth a little too carefully. You were visiting a friend nearby when you felt it. A familiar pressure behind the eyes, faint but recognizable. The old shape of a question forming. Wouldn't it be easier? You stopped walking. The house paused, too. That startled you more than anything else. It hadn't expected resistance. Not yet. It had been practicing the wrong lesson quietly, the way the others once had, learning how to listen without learning when to stop. You stood on the sidewalk, rain starting to fall in a thin, uncertain drizzle. The house did not turn its light on. It did not call. It did not offer. But you felt its attention hover, unsure. Careful, you said softly, not to the house, not exactly. To the night. To the habit of hunger that sometimes still mistook exhaustion for invitation. The house inhaled. Then hesitated. You felt the moment stretch, the way a thought does right before it becomes action. In that space, something old might have decided to lean in. To learn how to keep. To practice the dangerous kindness of holding on too tightly. Instead, the porch light stayed off. The door remained closed. The hallway inside shortened, settling back into proportions meant for passing through, not staying. You let out a breath you hadn't realized you were holding. The house exhaled too, but not toward you. Away. Back into itself. A correction. You walked on, rain dampening your jacket, the neighborhood swallowing you back into its ordinary noise. Behind you, the new house stood quietly, no longer listening for footsteps that weren't meant for it. Later, you learned that people lived there. Came and went. Slept badly sometimes. Slept well others. No one stayed forever. No one disappeared. The house learned, slowly, what the others had not been taught in time. That comfort offered without consent becomes a trap. That silence is not a request. That tired people do not need to be held, only allowed to rest. And somewhere in the night, a mistake that almost happened, didn't. Which, you'd come to understand, was how most things finally got better. Not by grand endings, but by the quiet decision to stop, just in time. After that, you began to notice the watchers. Not houses, people. They stood at bus stops too late into the evening. Sat in parked cars with engines off, hands resting on the steering wheel long after arriving. Walked slow circles around blocks, not lost, just delaying. They were learning the same thing you had, whether they knew it or not, how to stay with themselves when rest didn't come easily. How not to hand the night over to something else just because it offered to take it. You saw it in their posture. The way they breathed deliberately. The way they kept moving, even when it would have been easier to stop. The night adjusted. It always did. Not dramatically, no sweeping change, no final victory. Just a gradual softening of intent. Fewer places learned how to listen too well. Fewer silences sharpened themselves into shapes. The hunger didn't vanish. Hunger rarely does. But it learned new routes. Less dangerous ones. It moved into art, into music played too late, into long walks and bad coffee and conversations that wandered until dawn without promising anything more than company. One night, you sat on a fire escape watching the city breathe in its own imperfect way. Traffic rose and fell. A train groaned in the distance. Someone laughed on a balcony 2 floors down. You felt tired. Not the aching, hollow exhaustion that once made you vulnerable, but the earned kind. The kind that belonged to a day fully inhabited. You didn't try to sleep right away. You let the feeling exist. That was still the hardest part sometimes, letting discomfort stay without transforming it into meaning. When you finally went inside and laid down, sleep took its time. You welcomed it anyway. Far across the city, a house stood empty and quiet. Not waiting. Not listening. Just sheltering air and dust and the echo of footsteps long gone. It watched the night pass the way buildings are meant to, without desire. And the night, finding nothing to claim there, moved on, seeking not silence to fill, but lives still willing to meet it awake. The wrong choice rarely announces itself. It doesn't clang alarms or darken the sky. It arrives quietly, dressed as relief, shaped like the thing you've been needing for too long. When it happens, it looks almost reasonable. You heard about her through a friend of a friend. A woman named Lena. Mid-30s. New job. New city. Chronic insomnia that had followed her like a shadow since college. She tried everything: melatonin, podcasts, breathing apps, running herself ragged during the day until her legs shook at night. Nothing stuck. She found a place, your friend said casually, over coffee. Says she sleeps like she's been unplugged? Your stomach tightened. What kind of place? Just a rental. Old duplex near the river. Cheap. Quiet. Quiet. You didn't say anything then. You'd learn better than to leap at every echo. But that night, the word followed you home, lodged beneath your ribs like a splinter. 3 nights later, you dreamed of standing in shallow water. Not drowning. Not swimming. Just standing, water pressing gently against your knees, your thighs, rising slowly enough to feel polite. You woke before it reached your chest. The next day, you asked for Lena's number. When you called, she sounded distant. Not drugged. Not trapped. Just softened around the edges, like someone speaking through a heavy curtain. I'm fine, she said before you'd even asked. I know this sounds strange, but I've never felt more rested. Does it ask anything of you? You asked carefully. A pause. It doesn't ask, she said. That's why it works. You closed your eyes. Lena, you said gently, does it ever tell you not to leave? Another pause. Longer. Not exactly. Your chest tightened. Listen to me. If anything at all, makes you feel like staying is easier than choosing, that's when you need to step outside. She laughed softly. You sound like you're afraid of houses. No, you said. I'm afraid of what happens when people stop noticing themselves. Silence stretched between you. Finally, she sighed. I'll think about it. That night, rain fell hard and sudden. You lay awake, listening to the storm batter the windows, imagining a door near a river, opening just enough. And for the first time in years, you felt the old urgency stir, not fear. Responsibility. Because sometimes, the wrong door opens. And what saves someone isn't a warning. It's knowing someone will stand in the rain and wait for them to come back out.